Nicias told Athens, "Don't invade Sicily." Athens made him lead it. So he tried one last move. He explained how absurdly large the expedition would have to be. Ships, infantry, archers, transports, money. The kind of estimate designed to make a government quietly close the spreadsheet. Athens listened carefully. Then it became more enthusiastic. The assembly handed its 3 generals authority to scale up, and a plan for 60 ships began turning into one of the most expensive fleets a Greek city had ever launched. Nicias tried to scare Athens out of the invasion. He sold them the premium package. 2 years later, the fleet would be trapped, the army would be escaping on foot, and the general who warned them would still be there. How does the man who sees the danger become part of the disaster? Athens was already fighting Sparta. Officially, the 2 sides were enjoying an uneasy peace. In practice, the peace had spent several years being kicked down a staircase. Then an ally in Sicily asked Athens for help against a local enemy. It promised money for the operation. Athenian inspectors sailed over and saw expensive offerings. Their crews were entertained with impressive silverware. The Athenians came home convinced the money existed. Much of it did not. The original public mission sounded limited. Take 60 ships, help the allies, see what could be achieved. But Sicily was not a small island waiting politely to be reorganized. Syracuse was wealthy, populous, and capable of leading a resistance. Nicias understood that a limited mission could become an unlimited war almost immediately. Alcibiades saw the same island and reached a different conclusion. Glory, influence, money, perhaps eventually the whole thing.
So the ally definitely had the money?
It had excellent presentation skills. Athens voted for the mission and named 3 commanders. Nicias thought the whole idea was a mistake. 5 days later, the assembly met again to arrange the expedition. Nicias attacked the plan he had just been handed. Athens was risking a distant war, while its main enemy was still alive, armed, and still called Sparta. Sicily's cities were larger and less controllable than the sales pitch suggested. And if Athens wanted conquest rather than a quick demonstration, 60 ships were nowhere near enough. This was where Nicias tried to kill the expedition with arithmetic. At least 100 galleys, at least 5,000 heavy infantry, archers and slingers to answer Sicilian cavalry, transport ships, grain, money for a campaign far from home. He expected the price to terrify the assembly. Alcibiades had already answered him, and the assembly's appetite was its own. Thucydides says the Athenians became more eager. They gave all 3 commanders authority to determine the final scale.
So the fake money bought a real invasion?
It bought the meeting. Athens supplied the invasion. The warning had become the plan. Nicias had been appointed before he gave that speech. Thucydides says he took the command against his will, alongside Alcibiades and Lamachus, believing Athens had decided badly. He still took it. He would spend the next 2 years being right about several dangers. It would not help anyone. The fleet that gathered in 415 BCE was not merely large. Thucydides describes it as the most costly and splendid force a single Greek city had sent up to that time. Crowds lined the harbor. Families prayed. Trumpets sounded. Thousands of men boarded ships carrying enough bronze, timber, grain, and optimism to make catastrophe look like a parade. And this mattered. Once the expedition became a spectacle, doubt became harder. The city was no longer debating a proposal. It was watching its own greatness sail away. But the 3 commanders did not share one war. Lamachus wanted to attack Syracuse immediately, before the city could prepare. Alcibiades wanted to build alliances first, then turn those alliances into a platform for conquest. Nicias wanted to perform the limited mission, display Athenian strength, and go home. They followed Alcibiades' middle course. The clock started running. Before the expedition could settle into its strategy, Athens recalled Alcibiades to face charges connected to a religious scandal back home. He did not return for trial. He escaped, reached Sparta, and, according to Thucydides' account, told Athens' enemy how to make the Sicilian campaign worse, helped Syracuse send a commander, and reopened the war closer to Athens.
Athens recalled its most aggressive commander and let him brief Sparta?
They did not schedule it that way, but yes. Athens had removed one commander and manufactured an advisor for the enemy. Lamachus was still there, and when the siege of Syracuse began in earnest, he fought aggressively. Then he was killed during a clash around the developing siege works. Nicias, cautious and opposed to the campaign from the beginning, was left carrying it.
Is this a war plan or Athens speed-running every bad management decision?
Both, and the command structure was still getting worse. For a moment, Athens came close. The campaign's central mechanism was brutally simple. Build walls around Syracuse, cut the city off from the interior, and starve it into surrender. The Athenians seized the high ground and pushed their walls toward the sea. Syracuse kept building out to block them, and the Athenians kept breaking through. The circle tightened. Syracuse had already been fighting those walls, and Corinthian help had arrived. Then Gylippus came from Sparta and knew where to aim. He did not need to destroy the Athenian army. He needed to stop one wall. This time, Syracuse pushed its wall past the unfinished Athenian line before Athens could break it. This one held. The city could no longer be sealed from the countryside. Nicias had warned that 60 ships were too small. Even after all that enlargement, his force could not finish the siege.
They stopped the wall by building a wall across the wall?
Ancient siege warfare occasionally sounds like two contractors fighting over the same property line. But yes, as the wall contest turned against Athens, Nicias fortified positions near the harbor. From there, sickness, cavalry attacks, and supply problems wore down his force. In his own letter home, he said the besiegers had become the besieged. He offered Athens two choices: withdraw the expedition, or send another force as large as the first, and replace him. His kidney disease, he said, made him unfit to continue.
I have a theory. Every ancient disaster is procurement with spears.
Keep the corkboard. Athens is about to approve the emergency expansion pack.
So Athens chose another army and ignored replace me.
Athens sent another army. It kept Nicias. Demosthenes arrived with major reinforcements and acted immediately. He understood that time was now the enemy and launched a night assault on the heights above Syracuse. In darkness, units lost contact. Orders dissolved into noise. Athenians mistook friends for enemies, collided with one another, and were driven back in a disastrous rout.
So the Second Army fixed it?
For roughly one night, Demosthenes had seen enough. The siege mechanism was broken, the night attack had failed, disease was spreading, and a Spartan army was now operating from a permanent base near Athens itself. He wanted to leave while the fleet could still carry them home. Nicias resisted. He had private contacts inside Syracuse saying the city was exhausted and short of money. But Thucydides gives another reason more painful than optimism. Nicias feared Athens. If the generals abandoned the campaign without a public order, their enemies at home could accuse them of corruption, even betrayal. Nicias would rather face the enemy he could see than return to the assembly he had warned.
He was trapped in Sicily by the fear of being blamed for getting trapped in Sicily.
That was the trap. Eventually, conditions became impossible to deny. The commanders prepared to withdraw secretly. Ships were loaded, the route was open, the army was ready. Late in the summer of 413, on the night the army was to sail, the full moon darkened. A lunar eclipse passed over the harbor.
And then he waited 27 days.
No, that popular line is too clean. The diviners prescribed 3 times 9 days before departure. Most of the army wanted delay, and Nicias refused even to reconsider leaving before the interval ended. But the 27 days did not run out. Syracuse attacked first. The eclipse did not create the trap. It held Athens inside while the door finished closing.
So the moon gets blamed because compound decision failure doesn't fit on the postcard?
Exactly. The moon was dramatic. The trap was human. Syracuse had learned how to fight Athens in the harbor. Athenian crews were dangerous when they had room to maneuver, turn, accelerate, and strike from the side. The Syracusans reinforced and shortened their prows for head-on collisions, then forced the battle into water too crowded for elegant movement. They did not become better Athenians. They changed the game. Then they closed the mouth of the great harbor with ships. Triremes moored broadside, merchant vessels and smaller craft lashed into the obstruction. Not a giant chain, not a fantasy gate. Boats became the door.
Wait, their own ships are the wall? Then how does anyone get out?
By breaking through it. Athens put every surviving hope into one breakout. Soldiers packed the decks. Before the charge, Nicias went along the shore, calling to his captains one by one. Then the crews hit the barrier and drove back its defenders. Syracusan ships struck from around the harbor. Nearly 200 hulls crowded together. Oars snapped. Commands vanished. Skill became collision.
Plan B?
Try the same door again. Demosthenes wanted a second naval attempt. Nicias agreed. The crews did not. The fleet that had carried Athens across the sea was now abandoned in the harbor. The invasion would attempt to escape on foot. They still had one advantage: darkness and a head start. Syracuse stole both with a lie. Riders approached the Athenian camp pretending to be friendly contacts. They warned Nicias not to march that night because the roads were already guarded. Athens waited. Syracuse used the night to close the roads.
So the eclipse cost time, and a fake warning cost the head start.
When the army finally moved, it left behind the dead, the wounded, and the ships, the entire shape of the expedition that had arrived in triumph. Thucydides says the column contained not less than 40,000 people. Treat that as his reported scale, not an audited census. They moved through heat, dust, cavalry attacks, and blocked crossings, searching for a route that no longer existed. Night panic split the columns. Demosthenes' division fell behind, was surrounded, and surrendered on terms that promised the soldiers would not be killed. Nicias kept moving until his exhausted force reached the Asinaris River. Discipline collapsed at the water. Men pushed forward to drink while missiles fell and troops piled into the crossing. Nicias surrendered to Gylippus to stop the slaughter. Gylippus wanted to take Nicias and Demosthenes alive to Sparta. The victors at Syracuse killed them anyway. Thousands of prisoners were confined in exposed stone quarries, crowded together through heat, cold, hunger, and disease. Some were later sold. Some survived. Many did not. Thucydides ends the expedition about as bluntly as an ancient historian can. In his account, nothing came back intact. Not the fleet, not the army, and only a small fraction of the many who went to Sicily ever made it home. This was not the immediate end of Athens. The city fought for years more, but the force that sailed under prayers, trumpets, and cheering crowds did not come back. So, was Nicias right? He was right that Athens was disguising a conquest-sized risk as a limited intervention. He was right that 60 ships were nowhere near the scale of what Athens was actually starting. He was right that winning one battle would not make the island obedient, and that Sparta was still there. What he did not prove is that the campaign was impossible. Athens eventually committed forces far beyond the minimum figures he had named, and Thucydides does not let the answer stay simple. In his wider judgment, Thucydides says the expedition failed less because Athens miscalculated the enemy than because the city later failed those in the field and tore itself apart through political rivalry. Modern historians still argue over the balance. Some judge Nicias harshly for delay and indecision. Others emphasize that Thucydides presents him as experienced, brave, diplomatically skilled, and morally serious even in defeat. The disaster had more than one author, and Nicias is on the list. Nicias warned Athens. Then he accepted the command. His warning enlarged the force. His delays surrendered time. His fear of Athens helped delay retreat. His response to the eclipse delayed it again. His trust in a false message lost the army's head start. And through all of it, Syracuse adapted, Sparta intervened, and Athens answered every new warning with one more escalation. Thucydides thought Nicias deserved a better fate. Maybe he did, but tragedy is not innocence. Nicias saw the danger before Athens sailed. The tragedy is that seeing it did not place him outside the disaster. What should we badly draw next? Persia capturing a Roman emperor, or 10,000 Greek mercenaries who got trapped inside Persia and actually walked out? Choose in the comments. And if you want more history with fewer marble statues pretending everyone knew what they were doing, like and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel and lets us keep making badly drawn history.